Howdy folks, and welcome to Wellywood Wargaming. My name is Damon, and this is the video where we find out who is the best of all of the champions in the whole of the game of Necromunda. Before we get started though, please do like, share, subscribe. Check out the Patreon as well to keep me supported in this passionate endeavor. Now the community has spoken, so a disclaimer here, these are not my choices, these are your choices. I put this out in a poll on many different forums, on Reddit, in 3 or 4 different Facebook groups, on Instagram, on YouTube, on Discord, and I've collated all of the data here to figure out what the community believes are the best champions in the whole of Necromunda. Now, I've done this previously with all the Juves in the game. We found out that the Bone Pickers were, of course, the best Juve in the game. We did it with leaders too, but with champions, we have a lot more to chew through. So I'm going to make this video a little bit shorter than the last two. I'm not going to go through every single champion because, frankly, there are just too many, especially if you include all of the other stuff. There are a few sort of interesting ones here, but we'll go into more detail in a bit. But what I've done here, based on your votes and combined with your votes and my own sort of preferences really and experience with these guys, is put them all into tiers. Now, I'm going to go from tier 0, which is the absolute cream of the crop, tier 1, tier 2 to tier 3. Tier 3 being the worst of the bunch, tier 0 being the absolute best in the game. And again, thank you very much for all of your votes here because they really do make a difference when coming to something like this. And it's also really interesting for me to see what the community out there in the world playing Necromunda, whether you're in the States, whether you're in the UK, down under Hive like me, or anywhere you are, it's interesting to see this because this is taking into account everybody's local meta, everybody's house rules, and just a vast array of experience with playing this game. So I'm going to start at the bottom now with the weakest of what I think the champions are and what you think the champions are. And I have to say, none of these actually really got any votes, or very minimal votes anyway. And tier 3 only includes a few, not many. We've got the Outcast champion, who is frankly just kind of trash. The fact that you've got access to not very good stuff at the trading post, and also even if you make this guy a weird, they're not very good at actually doing psychic powers because they've got a willpower of something like 7 or 8. They're not the best Outcast champions. They are cheap, but they've got terrible stats, and that's why they're in tier 3. No more detail on that one. The next one, and quite an obvious one I think really, is the Genestealer Acolyte. It needs work. Games Workshop, you need to give this guy 2 wounds. I'm sure many of you in your groups do give the Acolyte an extra wound or something like that, but that's the real letdown on the Acolyte, and that's the reason why it's in tier 3. Yes, you can do shenanigans with it, you can do all sorts of interesting builds with it, but I think it really is in tier 3 based purely on the fact that it only has 1 wound. We've also got the Work Party Boss, the Shackleman, the Bone Scrivener, the Siphonite, and the Bosun. You'll notice, if you're not familiar with all those ones, they are from alliances which you can use in your gangs, and these are all classed as champion within those factions. That was tier 3, so I think you'll agree with most of those being fairly crap. Now we're on to tier 2. These are the kind of average, middle of the road kind of champions, and again, there aren't too many in here because most champions in Necromunda are kind of great. These ones are just pretty average really. I've put the Cult Witch in here, which is from the Chaos Helot gang. Of course, this really does depend on your meta, whether you're allowing that Cult Witch just the sort of Cult Witch powers, which is rules as written, that's what they get, which kind of makes them fairly poor. Otherwise though, if you're opening it up to other weird powers, it does make them quite a bit better. So it really does depend on that here, but I still think the Witch's stats are fairly weak, and you know, they've got to be in tier 2. I've put them in tier 2, and I think most people are going to agree with me on that one. But I'm not going to go into too much more detail on that. We've got the Stormcaller and the Watcher in here. Both are the Nomad champions, the Stormcaller being the Specialist champion. The reason why the Stormcaller's in tier 2 is because it's incredibly situational. A lot of people, myself included, don't really play Ash Waste scenarios. Let's be honest, Ash Wastes was a bit of a flop, and I don't know too many people personally who actually play Ash Wastes campaigns. If you do, the fact that this guy can affect the weather and the conditions on the battlefield can be huge. It can be huge, and that can move this guy up a tier or 2, depending on whether you're really doing that or not. But generally speaking, he's not that good. The Watcher, although he has got fairly decent stats and access to 2 very good heavy weapons, I just think he's not really that exciting. And again, I think that based on the fact that most people tend to play Underhive, It does mean that the nomads are just not as good in general because they haven't been fleshed out well enough to actually play in an Underhive setting, unfortunately. He's also quite expensive for what he brings. We've then got the Malstrain Convalescence, which rules as written only gets access to those Underhell's Malstrain weird powers. Some of them, they're all pretty fun, but none of them are particularly broken or particularly scary compared to something like the telepathy tree in weird powers. So again, if you're only exclusively using those weird powers for the Malstrain, then this guy's just not that amazing. He isn't a big damage dealer. He just kind of floats around, takes a few hits. He's pretty decent, but he's definitely kind of average here, which is why I've put him in tier 2. Then the bone of contention, which most people I think will agree with me here, the Bad Zone Sergeant and the Palonite Sergeant, both of which are pretty crap. The stats are not that good compared to other champions, unfortunately. Yes, they get access to some interesting equipment and you can build them nicely. They also get kind of good skill access as well. But based on the raw stats here, both the Bad Zone and the Palonite Sergeant are firmly in tier 2. We then have the Pyromagier as well, who is an interesting one, mainly because of the skills that he's got and the weapons and stuff, but again, comes in one of those alliances, which you're not going to get that much access to normally anyway, but I think he's better than some of the other alliance champions that we're going to talk about in a minute. Before we go into tier 1 and tier 0 eventually, I'm going to go back through this and do a top 10 in terms of your community votes at the end. You'll find that it's a pretty concise and very clear top 10 that we've got here with lots and lots of votes. So again, thank you for all your votes here. In terms of tier 1 though, this is in no particular order, and many of these are going to be in that top 10. None of the tier 2 and 3 are going to be in the top 10, I can tell you that now. But the first one, and a little bit of an interesting one here, is all of the Spirers. So the Oris, the Jakara, the Yeld, and the Malkadon here are in tier 1. Now, I did have a few people comment and say you shouldn't include Spirers because they're not technically champions, la-di-da-di-da, but they are technically champions because they're listed as champions. So I'm just going off rules as written. What is a champion and what's labeled as a champion will be used in this video. And I think the Spirers, all of them are very, very, very good, as we know, and are clearly in tier 1 here. Now, again, it's a conversation whether any of those particular Spirers are better than others. I would say probably the Oris is the best of the 4 personally, but there's all sorts of shenanigans you can do with Spirers to make them really, really powerful, especially as you develop them in a campaign. But I think for now, without too much data on these guys and having, known that the community hasn't really played much Spirers yet, I think really for now they have to just be in tier 1. We all know that they're good, but how good exactly are they? I think we'll find out in a year's time when so many people have play tested and figured out that actually they do have a few weaknesses. Blaze being the main one. The next one we've got is the Underboss, the Ogryn Underboss. We're going to talk in more detail about the Underboss because he's definitely made it into the top 10, along with the Goliath Stimmer there as well, who is most definitely somewhere I expected near the top here. We've got the Deacon from the Redemptionist there, another good champion. The Phantom from House Delac, the Matriarch from Escher, the Arms Master from Orlok, who's very, very solid indeed, the Road Sergeant from Orlok as well, the Augmech and Archaeotech, both the Vansar champions. We've got the Forge Boss, who is the Goliath regular champion, the Cutter from the Corpse Grinder cults, the Malstrain Gene Stealer, who is, if you're going to run a Malstrain gang, does count as a champion, or indeed a leader if you really want to make one your leader. But the Malstrain Gene Stealer had to be included in there because I felt like if I'm sticking Spirers into this, I have to also stick the Malstrain Gene Stealer into this, and he is a powerhouse. A really, really strong fighter there, and definitely near the top of tier 1. We've also got the Firebrand, who's the Cawdor regular champion there, who gets access to the heavy crossbow and things like that, so another good champion. We've got the Hunt champion, which is the Venator champion. You can make those very powerful with the right weapon and skill combinations. We've got the Drill Master from the Squats, and we've got the Mirror Mask, who is from the House, what are they called? Yolante delegation, and very, very interesting mechanics there as well, but on her own is definitely a strong fighter in tier 1 there. So that is tier 1. Again, I'm not putting them in order till the end now, and that's where we're at. So that is tier 1. I'm now going to go into the top 10 because you'll probably notice at the moment there are 2 missing, which are in tier 0. And we're going to go and look at the top 10 now and find out what you, the community, has voted as the best champion in the game. Now, again, I do think that all of this is highly, highly variable and really does come down to your local meta, how you do things, how you play things, what your house rules are. But the results are pretty clear here, and we have ourselves a winner. So let's go and have a look at this top 10 now. So from bottom to top here, the number 10 best champion in the game so far is the Goliath Forge boss. Now, the Goliath Forge boss got 14 votes here, which is not very many compared to the top spot, which you'll find out in a bit, but the Goliath Forge boss is obviously a very strong contender as one of the best champions in the game. He gets access to some great heavy weapons, namely the heavy bolter and things like that. Excellent skill access with Nerves of Steel, obviously being probably the main one you're going to take most of the time, particularly if you're taking that heavy bolter. But, of course, you have access to gene smithing. So you can always make this guy a close combat powerhouse. You can make him a shooting powerhouse, or you can mix it up and just make him just really good at everything. Obviously, he's not as good as the Forge Tyrant, of course. That's another story. And he was the clear winner in the best leader in Necromunda. But the Forge boss here is in at number 10 with 14 votes, and that's where he is. Equally on 14 votes here, and I'd say about as good really in very different ways, is the underboss for the Ogryns. The Ogryn underboss with 14 votes is in at number 9. This guy is very, very strong, has excellent stats apart from his willpower, of course, but can punch through absolutely anything. You get some really good access to muscle skills and brawn skills as well, and you can do some really fun things with him. You can give him just nothing but fists and run around just punching stuff with his one of those muscle skills there, and he's just really fun to use. Very powerful. Again, not as good as the Ogryn leader, of course, nowhere near, but definitely deserving of a top 10 spot, I would say. In at number 8 with 16 votes, we have the Vansar Archaeotech, which is an interesting one. I would have thought that the other Vansar champion would be in here as well, but so far he is not. 16 votes means that he's just slightly above the underboss and the Forge boss here, and I know for a fact that there are some really interesting combinations with this one. Great skills, great ballistic skill, great mental stats, access to half price Cyber Technica as well, which is pretty cool. So you can do some really fun stuff with this, because we all know Cyber Technica is too expensive generally for what it does. The fact that this guy gets it at half the cost is just excellent. And you can do some really interesting stuff with him, particularly with that spider rig and a combination of interesting Cyber Technica. You can make him a real scary close combat fighter as well, which is definitely an asset to your Vansar gang. So he offers something different to Vansar gangs, and I really love the miniature too. But you can also give him some excellent shooty weapons, and this guy is just an all-round badass and just a fantastic miniature as well. So definitely deserving of a spot in the top 10, and that's the Archaeotech. In at number 7 with 18 votes, and I wasn't really sure whereabouts this guy was turn up, but I knew he'd be solidly in the top 10 here. This is the Corpse Grinder Cutter. Could be a little higher, could be a little lower. It really does depend on how you're playing this guy. Personally, the Cutter is a little bit of a one-dimensional fighter, fantastic in close combat, but doesn't offer anything else. Does, however, get savagery skills on a primary. So what I really like with this guy personally, though, is the rotary flensing saw with rain of blows. So you can use a fight action as a simple and just swing that thing. Swing it round several times and just chop people to pieces. That's really fun, a cool combination, but you can give this guy some very, very scary skill combinations, and he is, a close combat powerhouse, as you'd expect, but doesn't really offer you anything different to what your leader and your gangers do in a Corpse Grinder cult gang. He's very solid, though. Not really a huge amount more to talk about with the Cutter, but I think that generally people are going to agree that he definitely deserves a spot in the top 10 here. The next one with 21 votes is the Malstrain Gene Stealer. Now, again, I think the data, isn't all out there yet, but it's clear to see when you look at a Malstrain Gene Stealer's profile, or if you've played an Underhell's campaign or scenarios or whatever where these guys turn up, they absolutely wreck shit. They're horrific to deal with. Very, very powerful indeed. Of course, purely close combat, they can't do anything else, but the skills that they've got 4 skills, 3 wounds, lots of attacks, and they deal a lot of damage as well. Very, very scary, tricky customer. Again, I think they're in here purely because not many people have played with them or against them yet, but they've got 21 votes and they're obviously in the top 10 here. They aren't your traditional champion because, you know, you can only use them as a champion in an actual Malstrain gang, and I can't actually for the life of me really see people playing Malstrain gangs in campaigns unless they are the arbitrator, because there's just zero development, zero character to your gang because you can't really do anything with it other than just play it and get some XP. But yeah, the Malstrain Genestealer, it's a good one. It's in there. It's at number 6, and that's 21. The next one, and again, a bit of a weird one. I expected this because I was including Spirers. Again, some of you won't agree with this and say you shouldn't have included Spirers, but they're in here. And we have the Horus, who I do agree with, think is the best Spirer out of the 4. He's the most tanky. He's the hardest to take down. He's got really, really good shooty weapons and really good close combat weapons, particularly the power fists. And in combination with your bolt launchers is a real scary customer. Access to fantastic shooting skills and whatnot as well. He's got great armor. He's very, very hard to deal with. He's got those 2 activations each turn as well. I mean, the Horus is very, very scary indeed and clearly deserves a space in the top 10. Is he a traditional champion? No, he's not, but people have voted. They've given him 28 votes, and that is why he's in at number 5. We're near the top now, and we're near tier 0, but not quite. This is the Stimmer in at number 4 with 42 votes across all of the polls that I did. 42 votes, we're getting into some serious numbers here. The Stimmer is the Goliath super champ or specialist champion. He is an absolute close combat beast. He is arguably better than most other close combat fighters in the game, apart from some of the ones we're going to talk about in a bit. But he's really, really, really good. You can give him the right skills. He will get in your face. You can pump him full of stims. You can give him stim slug stashes. You can give him some really good close combat options, as well as shooty options, actually, with the belt-fed grenade launcher thingies that you can give them. Most people, though, tend to go with the paired pulverizers just for the amount of attacks that you can put out with this guy. Something like 1 million attacks when you actually hit someone on the charge. But I knew this guy would be in the top 10. He is very hard to deal with most of the time. However, like anything, set him on fire and you've ruined his day. But that's coming from a Cawdor guy, of course. But the Stimmer, clearly in a number 4 there, and a solid top 10 contender with 42 votes as well. Here's where things get really exciting. Did you guess who was the top 3? I've got to say, number 3 is not tier 0. Number 1 and 2 are both tier 0. Number 3 is, of course, the Armsmaster. The Orlok Armsmaster gets 50 votes here. And I think I agree with this. The Armsmaster is a fantastic fighter. He offers so much to your gang. He gives bonuses out to your gang. He can give one guy Nerves of Steel for the turn. He also adds to your bottle checks and stuff as well. He's an absolute linchpin in Orlok gangs. And I have to say, if you're playing Orlok without an Armsmaster, you're just doing it all wrong. Mind you, I'd say that with Wreckers as well, to be honest, because they're also fantastic. But the Armsmaster, fantastic with any combination. He is a bit limited in terms of what he gets in his equipment and stuff. You can go with the big arc hammer or whatever it's called, or you can go with the shotgun, with Shotgun Savant and all those interesting skills that you can get with him, which is probably the way I'd usually go with him. But he is the core sort of soul of your Orlok gang, I think. With your Road Captain, you can do some interesting combinations, and he's just really, really good. Give him a good legendary name and a good combination of skills, great stats, and just a really, really solid champion here. And I think definitely deserving of the best of the tier 1s, I think. And that's why he's in at number 3. Okay, so you've made it this far in the video. I have to say, I've been really enjoying doing these. So again, thank you to the community for providing me with the results here. But at first, it looked like a very, very close run thing. But by the end of it, the results came in, and I'm actually really surprised with this. But number 2 has 104 votes. But can you guess which one it is? It is the Escher Death Maiden. Now, the Death Maiden is, I think, when the House of Blades book came out, everybody opened it and looked at the Death Maiden. All the Escher players got incredibly excited, but all of the other players who knew they're going to be playing against Escher just let out a silent sort of groan and died inside a little bit, because the Death Maiden is just horrific. She can do some work. So I think, again, if you're playing Escher without a Death Maiden, you're just doing it all wrong. You really have to have at least one Death Maiden in every Escher list. They are just fantastic. They are fast. They hit like an absolute truck. They're toughness 4. They dish out a ton of attacks. They re-roll 1s with their Toxin weapons, and they can make Toxin really, really hurt you. Toxin is already very powerful, especially now that the rules have changed around injuries and injury rolls and stuff like that as well. With the right skills, the right tactics cards, you can make one of these literally travel from one side of the board to the other and just auto-delete anything that they hit. It really is down to whoever charges first wins in a lot of these close combat situations, and the Death Maiden nearly always wins. They are brilliant, brilliant fighters, and easily one of my favorites in the whole game. I say one of because number one here, number one, Anyway, that's the Death Maiden. She came in at second. You may not agree with it, but you voted for it, so it is what it is. We need to talk about this guy because, 184 votes here. A lot of votes. Again, thank you for all these votes, but a pretty concise one. 80 more votes than second place. So 184 votes for top here, 104 for second place. It is a landslide victory for the Delac Nachtghoul. The Nachtghoul is disgusting. And, what an amazingly created and fantastic bit of rules work from Games Workshop on this one. I love the Nachtghoul. Delac are one of my favourite gangs in the game. They always have been, but as soon as this book came out and I saw the Nachtghoul, I was just in love. Love at first sight. This thing is just mind games. It is just, it's so good. Where to begin with the Nachtghoul? So not many options on loadouts. You've got really sort of two ways that you can run this guy. You can give him a big sword, or you can give him the Serpent Fangs. If you're not giving him the Serpent's Fangs, you're basically just not doing it right again. The fact is, they are paired and they are horrifically powerful when they hit anybody. Again, similar to the Death Maiden, this guy is fast. He is sneaky, and he hits like an absolute truck. Whatever he's going to charge, he's going to auto-delete it, pretty much. The Nachtghoul can also be a psyker like the rest of your Delac gang, which further adds to the power of this guy. With the right tactics cards, and I have to say, Delac get access to some disgusting tactics cards, this guy can be utilized in a number of very, very interesting and equally horrific ways. We can use Penumbral Mirror with him to teleport him into combat with people, but the real shining light in the Nachtghoul not only is his stats and his equipment, particularly the Serpent's Fangs there, the real reason why this guy is so good and number one champion in the whole of Necromunda is his special rule. His special rule means that you can deploy on the table whenever you like, in any turn that you like, and just totally mess with your opponent's whole brain. So the real reason why the Nachtghoul is so good, and the reason why he is the best champion in the game, and I wholeheartedly agree with this, by the way, is the special rule from the shadows. So basically, if this fighter should be set up at the start of a battle, they may be instead placed to one side. Then at the start of any round after the first, immediately before rolling for priority, their controlling player may set them up anywhere on the battlefield that is not visible to enemy fighters and not within 6 inches. 6 inches! So you can be well within charge range, just round a corner, away from an enemy leader. You get priority, you kill that leader. It's really that simple. That's scary, but the fact that I just love the way that you can play mind games with this, the fact that you can just hold off. Your opponent is constantly having to figure out when and where this guy is going to come on and just wreck face. And that, boys and girls, is why the Nachtghoul is the number one champion in the whole of Necromunda to date. So, again, the community spoke here, 184 votes. It's very concise, and I do wholeheartedly agree with this decision here. The Nachtghoul is just flipping fantastic. What more to say really on this one? I hope you enjoyed this video though. I really did enjoy making it. I should probably do one on gangers and brutes and stuff very soon as well, but I've got a whole bunch of other videos to get through. If you enjoyed this though, please do like, share, subscribe, and check out the Patreon as well. And I'll be back with another video real soon. Peace out.